Come see us on tour. We're going to be in Baltimore, Hartford, Connecticut, Syracuse, Atlantic City, Levittown, New York, Cohoes, New York, and Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. Here's what the FBI says back to people like me and you. Here's what they're telling the brain-dead, brainwashed masses who still turn to the corporate media for their news and information. It's just remarkable to me that after Russiagate, after Ukraine, after 20 years of Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, which is now an Al-Qaeda-run Syria with our help, that now they still turn to the corporate media for their news and information, and they're not skeptical. Here's what they say to people like us who are excited about what Trump's doing with the FBI. Here we go.
Danger here is fairly obvious, at least from my perspective, is that if you wind up firing thousands of FBI agents, who is going to be performing the agency's mission? Who is going to be enforcing the laws of the United States? Who is going to be carrying out counter-terrorist operations? Who's going to be busting up drug cartels? The FBI does a lot of day-to-day bread and butter work that many Americans have no idea they're out doing. They're working in the shadows. They're investigating crimes. They're bringing people to justice. And if you go in and you fire thousands of these on-the-street agents, you're at least creating the potential that a lot of this crime will go unpunished and possibly lead to even more crime.
I want to ask you about...
So what would you say back to that U.S. Deputy Assistant Attorney General who is a big defender of the blob and corruption inside the FBI? What do you say to them? Hey, go ahead.
I mean, first of all, there's lots of problems with this war on crime, but he's overlooking a lot of the other stuff the FBI is doing. For example, they just framed Chokwe Antar Lumumba, who is a progressive mayor in Jackson, Mississippi. Now, Cooperation Jackson was for about 10 years, a darling of the radical left, right? These are socialists, black nationalists who have, won the mayorship in Jackson, Mississippi. They have, organized in the community. The Chokwe Antar Lumumba's father, the first mayor, died of a heart attack. His son later gets elected. This guy was framed by the FBI for taking bribes. Now, maybe Chokwe Antar Lumumba takes bribes. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, he has been indicted because the FBI created this fake shell company and approached him about some land that the city of Jackson, Mississippi had. And this, to remind people, right, Jackson, Mississippi had a major problem with lead in the water. I mean, it's a very, very poor town, right? And what Cooperation Jackson is trying to do is very noble, right? So they entrap him by saying, pretending to be a company that wants to buy and develop this land. And then they charge him with accepting a $100,000 bribe. Now, maybe he did accept the bribe, but we haven't heard the defense yet. Maybe his defense is that way. I didn't accept a bribe. Like, they offered to give some money to this or that charity, or whatever, right? I mean, indictments are not proof. And whatever the case, it's like, it was the FBI that offered the bribe. This is classic entrapment. They've done this to a progressive black mayor within the last couple months. This is the kind of stuff the FBI gets up to way too often. And it's for these reasons that all the same people who 3, 4, 5 years ago were, loving Cooperation Jackson should be trying to prune back this agency, which is doing everything it can to destroy Cooperation Jackson.
And they did it to the Uhurus.
One example that might affect some of these leftists.
They just did it to the Uhurus. I don't know if you're familiar with that case.
Yeah.
Out of St. Louis and Tampa, St. Pete. They went and and even the judge, even though they found him guilty of something, they didn't give him any jail time. And the judge said, these people are guilty of free speech.
Right. They were accused of being Russian agents because, I forget what the details were, but yeah, it seemed pretty minimal. This is an old thing. This goes back to Hoover, targeting mainstream black politicians. I had a friend years ago who worked for Willie Brown, who was Speaker of the House for many years, Speaker of the California Assembly in California for many, many years, African-American politician. They used to say he would have been governor of California if he had been white rather than black. She worked for him during the anti-apartheid struggle, and he actually allowed her to do a lot of anti-apartheid organizing. anyway, one time there was some gala, and they were selling tickets for it, and at the last minute, some company that had made legitimate donations to Willie Brown in the past said, "Oh, we want a couple more tickets." It even bought some tickets the proper way, like through the credit card or a check or whatever. And they were like, last minute, "Oh, can we get 2 more tickets? Like, here's some cash." And my friend said, "Oh, this seems reasonable." And she gave this cash to Willie Brown's chief of staff. And this woman was like, "Absolutely not. You do not ever accept cash." Like, what? And my friend was like totally shocked. What could this overreaction be? Well, lo and behold, it turned out this was a sting operation. But Willie Brown was hip to it. I mean, Willie Brown was not some sort of radical. Willie Brown was like a mainstream Democrat, is a mainstream Democrat. And it was this, they had some phishing like company that the government had seized somehow. The FBI was using it. It looked legitimate. And they were trying to just sneak this little cash payment in to then say, Willie Brown is guilty of, taking bribes, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, that's the level of security that successful Black politicians in America have had to develop over the decades because of the constant harassment and in attempts at entrapment and blackmail by the FBI.
And what? And who
is never went to the press about this, But this sort of stuff happens all the time.
And so yes, and who would be directing the FBI to have that kind of politics? So what is that about? Do you have any theories on that?
I mean, we have hints from the Hoover days that it was like about racism and this fear of a Black Messiah, and that the Hoover was personally like very concerned about Black people in America uniting and getting organized. And so they being the FBI, didn't just focus their ire on radicals like the Black Panther. They were also concerned about maintaining control of the elected political class.
Yep.
It's not that they would necessarily prosecute Willie Brown, but it's just like, you want to get dirt on everyone. You want to set everyone up and have something on them, right? So, I mean, who nowadays would be in charge of that? I don't know. But this is part of the whole thing about institutional legacy and culture. And this is also hopefully some of the stuff we can find out if there really is a campaign of massive declassification of documents, right? Because Hoover's long gone. It started with Hoover. It was his obsession. He puts in print, the danger of a Black Messiah. But who would be doing that in the late 80s? Who decided to set up Chokwe Antar Lumumba in Jackson, Mississippi? Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's just because, as Chuck Schumer revealed when he said,
"You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you."
So what he revealed when he said that is that the FBI, the CIA, the NSA, they don't work for the president. They don't work. Yeah. So that means they don't work for democracy. They don't work for the citizens. They're working for some dark moneyed group, which is, to me, the handful of billionaires who actually run things in the Western world. That's who the FBI actually works for. They don't. Yeah. They're not actually a crime-fighting organization. They're a political organization that is undermining citizens from coming together and opposing oligarchy. They work for the oligarchs. They don't work for the democratically elected politicians.
Yeah. Their mission has been to keep us disorganized, to keep us on the back foot, so that we are easier to exploit, easier to rule, and easier to shift the burden of taxation to working people and liberate the elite from paying their fair share of taxes and all of that stuff. That's absolutely what it's about. It's a kind of, class warfare. Whether or not the FBI even understand it as such, that's absolutely what's going on. And they are also, empire builders, and it's their, their own, these networks of people who are, in it to win it. And you have to curry favor with these powerful interests along the way up. One hand washes the other.
And so just to wrap this up, when people say, well, Kash Patel's just going to hire his own goons that are loyal to Trump, or they're not, they might get rid of USAID, but they're not against the mission. They're just going to fold that back into the State Department and do it. Hey, we'll deal with that monster when it shows itself. You can't deal with the hypothetical. So again, that is destructive. I find that very destructive, just as you find it destructive. And instead of taking advantage of the moment and taking advantage of someone who's an obvious disruptor and is an enemy of the establishment, Donald Trump, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., Kash Patel. Instead of taking advantage of that, they're just pissing it away, and it's naivety in the extreme.
Yeah, and they're siding with the FBI. They're siding with USAID. Yeah, and Kash Patel, it's important to remember, he got to start as a defense attorney. For 8 years, he was a defense attorney in the beginning of his career in Dade County, and he, in his book and elsewhere, has expressed this defense attorney's sense of, the law needs to be stress tested constantly. And he does seem to have a genuine concern for the rule of law and democracy. So, I mean, I take him at face value until we see otherwise. That I think he thinks that America will be a better place if we do not have an unaccountable, corrupt, bullying FBI, but that we actually have a responsive, accountable, transparent crime-fighting organization.
And if
we're a long way from that now.
And if Pam Bondi and Kash Patel decide to go after the free speech of pro-Palestinian protesters, we'll deal with that then.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. What you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, which is what many progressive leftists are screaming at the top of their lung. Throw the baby out with the bathwater because I disagree with their policy on this. I'm going to get rid of all the good things because they're Zionists. I can't work with them, which is the opposite of how organizing works.
It's, to use a medical metaphor, this position that we're criticizing is sort of like if you had a cancerous tumor being, I don't want any treatment. I don't want an operation. I could get an infection if I have this tumor taken out. It's like, yeah, you could. That's a risk. But then you deal with that when that happens, because right now you have a tumor. Like, this is the problem you actually have. Yes, you might have another kind of problem in the future, but right now you got this problem and it's growing and it needs to be dealt with now.
Christian Parenti, I really appreciate you taking time. Everybody should check out his latest article about why progressives should be supporting Trump's efforts in dismantling or doing what he's doing in the FBI. It's over at Unheard. Thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it. Always great to talk to you. I learn a ton every time I read your articles and talk to you.
Well, thank you very much. And right back at you, Jimmy. Keep up the great work, man. You're doing really important work, and there's many of us who follow you regularly and just are very, very thankful of all you do. And as I've said before, I know you are under a lot of pressure. It's not all applause. It's like you got these platforms that are very difficult to deal with. So keep doing what you're doing.
We'll do. I appreciate the kind words. Thank you very much, Christian. Come see us on tour. We're going to be in Baltimore, Hartford, Connecticut, Syracuse, Atlantic City, Levittown, New York, Cohoes, New York, and Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets.